I want to bring in Democratic Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. He's on the Foreign Relations Committee as well. Senator, there's widespread reporting that one of the last things that President Obama said to President Trump was, you know what, the #1 national security threat right now facing the U.S. Is North Korea, the nuclear threat from North Korea. Do you agree with that?
Well, certainly, as we've seen North Korea continuing to perfect its ballistic missile technology so it can both get greater accuracy and greater, breadth and scope of its length of its trajectory, and the miniaturization of its nuclear weaponry, then ultimately that is a real threat, and this is not a conventional actor. Countries that have leaders with nuclear weapons, for the most part, understand the theory of mutual self-destruction, which is if you fire at me, I fire at you, and we both die. And so people don't do that. In this case, you don't have a conventional actor. And that's why this has to be at the very top of the president's agenda with the Chinese president, because ultimately China can do much more than it has been with North Korea, because it basically sustains North Korea in the various supplies of raw and other materials that it gives to North Korea.
Yeah, they're rolling out the carpet now down on the tarmac for the Chinese leader who's going to be walking down those stairs momentarily. Why have the Chinese so far disappointed the U.S. and so many others and been reluctant to take the kind of pressure steps that the U.S. would like to see to squeeze the North Koreans in scaling back its intercontinental ballistic missile tests, its nuclear tests, which are so worrisome not only to the folks in South Korea and Japan in that region, but all over the world?
Well, this is the part that's not fully understandable. The Chinese themselves should be concerned about North Korea with nuclear weapons at its border. Look, they have been, #1, believing that there's still more time, and so they're more into some type of engagement, dialogue with North Korea. Secondly, they don't want to see a collapsed North Korea at their border, and they can get concerned about what does that mean for them, as well as what would South Korea and the West do if there was a collapsed North Korea. But those, I think, fall far short of their obligation here. And so we need to change China's calculus, that right now they feel that there is no consequence for them not moving further in getting North Korea to end its nuclear ambitions, at least as it relates to nuclear weapons. And so, for example, if we were to deploy more significant missile technology into South Korea as a defensive measure, the Chinese certainly are not going to want that. But they're going to look at that and say, well, maybe we need to get more serious about North Korea. We need to change China's calculus, because right now it thinks there's both time and not the type of necessity that we think. I personally think the window is closing on us pretty quickly.
Yeah, a lot of people are deeply worried about the North Korean threat. What are your expectations, realistic expectations? What are the positive steps potentially that could emerge from these talks?
Well, that's the key question. There's several issues. #1, what we just discussed, North Korea's got to be at the very top of it. Got to get some commitment from China to move more aggressively. What's happening in the South China Sea with territorial developments of islands that have been militarized by China in a major international shipping lane? That's a real concern. Our concern with our trade relationship with China, very complicated. And of course, the president, both as a candidate and subsequently, has talked about China as a currency manipulator. What breakthroughs on any of those things are going to be achieved? Now, China, I think, likes the idea of dealing with President Trump because they see a transactional opportunity. But some of these things are not simply the art of the deal. And so I hope the president can get them to change their calculus on a couple of these things, particularly on the security questions, because those are the most pressing, and we'll see what he can accomplish.
We see aides, the staff members from the Chinese leader walking down those stairs. We expect to see President Xi Jinping momentarily as well. This is an important moment in the U.S.-China relationship. These are the two greatest economic powers, Senator, right now. So in addition to the nuclear threat from North Korea, there are plenty of other trade-related economic issues on the agenda as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Look, on the currency manipulation side, that's a real big issue. If you're going to manipulate your currency so that at the end of the day it makes it more difficult for American companies to compete because of what you do in your currency, that's a real consequence. Looking at the consequences of intellectual property rights.
Senator, I'll interrupt for
sure.
a moment. The President Xi Jinping and his wife now have just emerged from that Air China aircraft, and they're walking down the stairs, and they'll be received by an impressive U.S. delegation, Senator, including Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who made his way down to Florida to receive the Chinese leader. President Trump will be down there, I suspect, within an hour or so. They'll have dinner tonight. So once again, I'm sorry for interrupting. I'll let you pick up your thought.
Well, I'm glad to see Secretary Tillerson actually at these meetings with world leaders and the president. It's very important that the Secretary of State be there. Look, on the question of our trade relationship, intellectual property rights. This is a continuing challenge with China. And this is where America leads in the world. Our creativity, our innovation from the high-tech field, from the pharma field, just to mention a few, biotechnology. We need to make sure that when Americans create things, that their intellectual property is preserved, that they get credited financially and otherwise for those creations that are uniquely American. And to have them stole in China without the ability of those protections is a major trade issue. So there's many economic issues that are at stake in addition to the security questions between these two leaders.
Hey, Senator Menendez, thanks as usual for joining us. We're going to continue our special coverage. You see the Chinese president.